Champaign, Illinois, was already deep into a hot summer when Yingying Zhang arrived in the United States with a plan that was simple, brave, and exact. She was 26 years old, far from home, and focused on a single year of work that could change the direction of her life. Yingying was from Nanping in southeast China. For most of her life, she had pushed toward education with the kind of steady drive that made other people trust her. She had spent years at the top of her classes. She studied environmental engineering and she kept going, earning advanced degrees and building a future that pointed toward research and teaching. Outside of school, she loved music. She sang in a band. She was not only disciplined. She was alive with interests, goals, and the kind of warmth that made people believe she would always come back. In April 2017, she said goodbye to her family and flew across the world to Illinois. The distance was not just miles. It was time zones, language, culture, and the loneliness that can come from starting again in a new place. But Yingying was independent, and she carried herself like someone who could handle it. She arrived at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a one-year research plan focused on photosynthesis and crop productivity. She was already thinking beyond it, considering a PhD. The future she pictured was clear. She wanted to return to China and become a professor. Back home, her fiancé Huey Zin was counting down the days until he would see her again. Their story began years earlier when they studied at the same university, finishing first and second in their graduating class. They were planning a wedding in October. It was supposed to be only a few months away. By June 2017, Yingying had been in Illinois for about 2 months. She was busy throwing herself into her research, meeting new people, and learning the rhythms of a life that was still unfamiliar. She was careful, organized, and committed. June 9 was going to be one of those packed days that international students often live through, moving from one obligation to the next with no extra time. That morning at 8:30 a.m., she arrived at the university to do research. Around noon, she hurried back to her dorm for lunch. After that, she had an appointment with a letting agent. She hoped to sign a lease on a new apartment, another step towards settling into her year in Illinois. The plan after the appointment was to return to campus for more work, then meet friends for dinner around 7:00 p.m. After lunch, Yingying took the first of 2 buses to reach the apartment she was going to view. She was relying on the transit system, which meant her schedule depended on timing she could not control. At 1:39 p.m., she sent a text to the letting agent saying she would be about 10 minutes late. The reply was calm. It was no trouble, but time kept moving, and Yingying did not arrive. At 2:38 p.m., she was still a no-show. The letting agent had to leave. As the afternoon went on, people tried calling Yingying. She did not answer. She missed her research work. She did not show up for dinner. And just after 7:00 p.m., with no contact at all, a friend finally called campus police. That night, around 9:00 p.m., a search began at her dorm room. The room was dark. The windows were shut. There were no signs of forced entry. Her travel documents were there. Some cash was there. What was left behind did not look like someone packing up and disappearing. It looked like someone who planned to come back. At first, it could have been explained in ordinary ways. A missed call, a long day, a wrong bus, a dead phone battery. But as the hours stacked up, the silence became its own kind of evidence. By noon the next day, nearly 24 hours had passed since anyone had heard from her. The case was no longer a worry. It was a missing person case, and the search widened fast. Efforts to trace her phone produced a hit near the Illinois bus station, but there was no sign of her there and no sign of the phone. The campus had an advantage, though. Cameras were everywhere, many of them good quality. If Yingying had moved through campus corridors and nearby streets, the cameras would have caught something, and they did. Footage from her first bus showed Yingying getting on. The bus was not crowded. Nothing about the scene looked dramatic. It was just a student on a routine trip moving through a normal day. But the next detail mattered. When she got off, she was on the opposite side of the road from where she needed to be for her second bus. She tried to run. She tried to wave it down. She missed it by seconds. That moment was captured too from the second bus's external camera. Then, on a third camera a couple of blocks away, she was seen walking down the street and stopping at a corner, standing as if she were deciding what to do next. She was likely recalculating her route. Maybe she was checking times. Maybe she was trying to figure out whether to wait, call a ride, or walk. That was when a dark car stopped beside her. The conversation was brief. From the footage, it looked like a quick exchange of words, a simple question and answer. Then Yingying got into the passenger side. The car pulled away. After that, there were no more sightings. The disappearance snapped into a sharper shape. The car did not look like a taxi. The driver was unknown. The way it pulled up suggested intention. The camera footage showed the car had been circling the area before it stopped for her. It had been going the opposite direction, then appeared to notice Yingying as she turned a corner. The vehicle turned around and came back to pull in next to her. The license plate could not be read, but the make and model could be determined. It was a black Saturn Astra. The search for that car began with a list. In the area, there were only 18 four-door Saturn Astras registered to owners in Champaign County. More than half were eliminated quickly because they were not the right color. The list narrowed. Then, another piece fell into place. A student named Emily reported that on the day Yingying disappeared, a white male driving a dark car had pulled over to talk to her. He introduced himself as an undercover police officer working in the area. He displayed a black badge that looked cheap and fake, like a costume prop. He asked Emily to get into the car. She refused. He backed off, told her to call police if she saw anything suspicious, and drove away. That encounter had taken place about 4 hours before Yingying got into a similar car. With the Saturn Astra list tightening, one registered owner drew attention. Brendt Christensen, 28 years old. On June 12, officers knocked on his door. Brendt said he could not remember where he had been on June 9. He assumed he was at home, either playing video games or applying for new jobs. He lived with his wife, though their relationship had shifted into an open arrangement after a breakdown. On June 9, his wife was out of town and could not confirm his whereabouts. Brendt was not a drifter. He was local. He had a master's degree in physics and had been a PhD student. He was known around campus because he worked there as a teaching assistant. He had no criminal record. He said he knew nothing about the disappearance. The search continued while attention stayed on the list of Astra owners. As days passed, Yingying's family and her fiancé traveled from China to Illinois. They came into a place they barely knew, trying to move through a foreign system while holding on to a single hope that she would be found. The community response grew. Posters appeared, volunteers searched. Vigils and gatherings formed around the idea that if enough eyes were open, Yingying would be brought back. Rewards were offered and increased. Her university helped support her family's time on campus. People who had never met her showed up to walks and concerts dedicated to her, drawn in by the shock of how quickly a person could vanish in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. After killing her, he dismembered her and placed her remains into 3 separate bags. He threw those bags into a dumpster outside his apartment. Then he drove around Champaign, disposing of her belongings, scattering them across the area, traveling over 100 miles while throwing items away. The dumpster contents were scheduled to be emptied 3 days later and taken to a landfill. In Brent's telling, this was the point of no return, the part of the plan designed to erase her. He spoke with cold certainty that her body would never be found, and that her family would leave the United States empty-handed. He compared himself to Ted Bundy. He bragged that he was good at it, watching the search unfold and feeling proud of how little anyone could see. He even claimed he had killed before, saying Yingying was number 13. In text messages to Tara, he wrote words that stripped away any remaining doubt about what he believed he had done. He said it was him. He said she was gone forever. For Tara, the recordings were not just evidence. They were survival. She leaned into a submissive role to avoid signaling fear or suspicion. She believed that if Brendt sensed she knew too much, she might not be safe. At that stage, Yingying was still officially missing. But in reality, the case had become a murder inquiry. Her family was told the truth they had been trying to outrun. On June 30, Brendt Christensen's birthday, he was arrested. Testing confirmed Yingying's blood and DNA in his apartment. The probability that the DNA found on the carpet belonged to anyone else was described as astronomically small. Devices were seized. His online activity was examined. He had posted on adult platforms about testing limits and experiencing everything. He read material related to kidnapping and rape fantasies. He researched serial killers by victim count. He downloaded a paper on human decomposition. He saved disturbing images of women. Emily, the student who had refused to enter the car earlier that day, identified him from a photo lineup. More information about his state of mind surfaced. In counseling sessions in the months before the murder, he discussed drug and alcohol issues, suicidal thoughts, and homicidal thoughts. He spoke about wanting to hurt others, not necessarily specific people, but a type. He was charged with kidnapping resulting in death and making false statements, though he pleaded not guilty. The legal path ahead carried the highest possible stakes. If convicted of kidnapping resulting in death in federal court, he faced life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Illinois had ended capital punishment at the state level years earlier, but federal law allowed a death sentence even where the state did not. As the case moved forward, Yingying's family lived in a strange, extended waiting period. Holidays came and went, searches continued. Parks and abandoned houses were checked. The pain did not stay still. It stretched across months. At one point, Brendt indicated he would plead guilty and reveal the location of her body. But the offer held no guarantee. He had lied repeatedly. The possibility of manipulation stayed present. The odds of finding remains were already shrinking with time. Eventually, the case reached trial. During opening statements, Brent's lawyers admitted he was responsible for Yingying's death, while disputing parts of the prosecution's account. The recordings were central. His defense argued he had been drinking heavily when he made them, and that his claim about being responsible for other killings was not supported by evidence. The verdict came quickly. He was found guilty on all counts. Sentencing was slower. The question of death versus life without parole divided the jury. They could not reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty. As a result, the judge imposed life in prison without the possibility of parole. In court, as the sentence was read, Brendt lowered his head and smiled. For Yingying's family and fiancée, the outcome did not bring closure. It brought an ending that still had a missing piece too large to ignore. Her remains had not been found. Without them, there could be no return home, no burial, no final act of care that families hold on to when everything else is taken. Over time, the practical reality of the landfill became part of the story. The dumpster contents had been compacted multiple times. Anything left could be smaller than a cell phone. Searching the landfill would mean removing massive amounts of waste, exposing workers to hazards, and creating environmental risks. The physical world, indifferent and heavy, had become a shield around what Brendt had thrown away. There were later discussions of other missing or murdered women and children who might fit his profile, but no evidence tied him to those cases. What remained certain, grounded in recordings, DNA, video, and timeline, was what happened to Yingying Zhang after she missed her bus. A young woman with an October wedding plan, a year of research ahead, and a future built around teaching, stood on a corner in Champaign on June 9, 2017, trying to adjust to a small travel delay. A dark car stopped beside her. A brief conversation happened. She got in, and from that moment forward, Yingying Zhang was never seen alive again. Years later, a memorial garden on the University of Illinois campus carried her name, offering a place for people to stand in the open air and remember that she was more than a headline or a case file. Du social. Her family created an endowment fund in her memory to support international students in crisis and their families, shaped by the fear they felt when they were thousands of miles from home and did not know who to ask for help. In one of her final journal entries, Yingying wrote a line that sounded like a quiet promise to herself. Life is too short to be ordinary. Her story ended in Illinois, but it did not end in peace. The truth of what happened was known. The person responsible would never walk free. Yet the last, simplest wish remained unfulfilled. As of now, Yingying Zhang's remains have never been found.